This is TWiT. I'm not sure Apple did a good... I got my new iPhone, as I'm sure many of you did. This is the so-called Desert Titanium.
Desert Titanium.
I asked Lisa, what color is that? She said, pink. I said, it's not pink. She said, well, maybe it's rose gold. I said, it's not rose gold. Jason, show us all the colors. You have
a phone with no name. Something like that. I don't know.
You have all the colors in front of you, don't you? Can you press that button?
Let's see if I can do that.
There it is.
Oh, there it is. Hello.
Desert Titanium on the left.
Desert Titanium. I don't have all the colors. I have some colors. This is the Pro in Desert Titanium. Yeah. This is the Pro in Natural Titanium, which is, you know, gray.
Silver,
but it's
gray,
nice.
Yeah.
It's very silver gray. It's very nice. And then in the middle, I have two beautiful iPhone 16s. And I mean, I'm not kidding here. I think these are the best colored phones. I really liked the orange coral iPhone XR, but like it's been years since Apple has made phones in colors that are quite this spectacular. Even the blue 15 was a little more muted. These are super bright. And apologies for my dimly lit garage, but these are very just incredibly striking. The pink and the blue, incredibly striking. So that's a pink plus and a blue 16. Yeah, and like they did a great job with the color on the cheaper models.
They're definitely real colors. They're not like, okay, we'll give you a gray, but we tinted it a little bit.
No, in fact, I should have shown Lisa that pink because that's the pink. That's really pink.
What I want to know, Jason, is that
the thing behind me is pink.
We know how much control Apple likes to have like over like reviews and stuff like that. At this point, do they give you like a custom color LUT so that if you are like doing a video to make sure that the colors are absolutely correct what they want them to be?
I think no. I think if you were a YouTuber, and Apple's gotten so much better at YouTubers and influencers and trying to get them involved in this. You see it now. Like I got 10 years of this game, but like a blogger today would not be asked to review these products, right? But they know how many people influencers and YouTubers reach. And I'll tell you, if they felt like there was a YouTuber who wasn't setting their white balance correctly, there would be a conversation. I do think that would actually, I think it would be as simple as like, it doesn't really, can we help? Can we send somebody to calibrate I think that's what they would probably do more than anything else. Yeah. Just it's not quite right. You're not.
I mean, before we get into the actual briefing, I was having a chat with Marcus Brownlee about lighting, and my goodness, but before he got the big lighting grid, he says that he just spent $80 on a single light balanced bulb. I think I even happen to remember the name and the Amazon link to
Jason,
that.
Would they do that with you when at the magazines? Would they contact you about the colors of the phone pictures?
Oh yeah, I mean, certainly they cared. Here, I've got some. I want to show these cases to our video audience. The cases also look really great. They did a great job with the case design in general. But
actually, that brings up one question because the biggest. Sure. Oh, go ahead. Finish the question I asked last time.
The previous question. We're gonna be worlds inside worlds here. They cared. They care about misrepresentation of their products and how their products look. There is a certain degree, and it changes from era to era of PR people. But we've definitely had issues where what do we do? We did a CGI Mac that was kind of like smashed and smoke was coming out of it because it was like the headline was like prevent Mac disasters. It was the cover. I thought it was really clever. And they were a little concerned that we were suggesting, I mean, clearly that Mac had been crushed by something. It had been hit by a meteor or something, but they were like, you're taking our product and defacing it and putting it on a magazine cover. But Leo, this is the thing. As the editor, I would have listened. I understand your issue. Yeah. But I mean, it's our speech.
Press,
although I will say, magazine covers are not free speech. They are marketing, and therefore the rules are a little bit different than the words you put inside.
Interesting.
If you've got a time
put
machine,
the smashed Mac inside, it would be okay. But
there's a question. I mean, you can't just say free speech because are you appropriating something or misappropriating something in order to sell magazines? It's slightly different. It's just more complicated in terms of media law. But we also had one. Forgive me if I've told this story before, where we did a customize your Mac issue, and we had a bunch of fanciful Macs. We had like a matrix guy with a cube. This is how long ago this was. And we had an iMac, one of those G3 iMacs, and we put cow spots on it and had a cowboy roping it.
Oh, fun.
And it turned out that was about 1 month before they introduced the Blue Dalmatian iMac, which also had cow spots on it. And we got a call, and I'm not quite sure what they thought because we didn't understand what their problem was. And then like 2 months later or whatever, an iMac that looked just like it came out. And we're like, oh, all right. But what are they going to do? Say like, no, don't put a thing on from the future. Like, I don't know. Anyway, they care. They know that there's a limit to what they can do, but they do care about how they're perceived. And a lot of times you will get a little nudge after the fact saying, I didn't, we have some questions. They won't say don't do it, but like they will occasionally do that where they're like,
of course,
you
ironically,
kind of misrepresented our product there.
They crushed everything but a Mac in that ad that they did.
Yeah, I will tell you another one of the rules about assigning or agreeing to a reviewer guideline and getting review units, and this goes back to when I say it you'll get it, is you can't take it apart. Because in the early days, everybody who would get a review unit, they would review it and then they would do a teardown or they'd do a smash test. And Apple has said now, like, if you want to go out after they come out and buy one and take it apart, we can't stop you.
That's in fact what iFixit does. They go down to they get their Australian
Australia or New Zealand where they can get it on at midnight. Yeah. And then so that's just one of the reviewer rules is you don't take these apart. These are the ones we're giving you to review, not to smash.
And that's totally fair because they are still Apple's property. They're not like they're not gifts to the reviewers. So yeah, they have a right to do that. And like you said, if you want to take it apart, fine, just buy one. Yeah. And that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do.
Do that.
Yeah, and then we
So my other question was, getting back to the iPhone, the biggest fix, it seems to me the only biggest change in the iPhone besides colors is this new controls button. And how are cases handling that capacitive button on the side?
Well, if you're Apple, you knew it was coming and you built a camera control button into all your cases that actually carries the touch through.
So that's a capacitive button.
It is a capacitive button on the case. And if you're a case manufacturer right now, you did a cutout and it's not going to be very good.
No.
But I imagine that they are all, scrambling to figure out how can they build a capacitive button into their cases and then build that into the next generation that come out. But I will tell you, I think the case experience on one of these Apple cases or the Beats case that have the capacitive buttons is very good. And this is Apple using their advantage. Like Apple knows exactly what that thing is before it ships, and the case manufacturers have to guess. And it's going to be costly for them. They're going to lose some sales. They're going to get some complaints, and then they're going to have to build a new set of cases that will cost more to manufacture because they're going to need that button in it.
I did this last year too. I bought the Peak Design case when it first came out because I don't like bare raw dog in my iPhone, and it didn't have it did the same thing. It had a cutout for the action button, and then later they updated it with an actual button. And I bet you, because I ordered the Peak Design, I'm going to have the same thing
right there.
I'm going to
have to.
Alex, is that the new Peak Design, Alex?
Yeah, this is
got a cutout.
It's got a cutout.
It's got a cutout there. I can't get it in focus.
I have to say that camera button's nice. I was able to take the camera icon off of my dock. I don't have a camera icon anywhere on my iPhone anymore.
It's still a work in progress. They just came out with either a beta, I think it's a beta that includes the I think it's the push to focus feature. Like it's just like Apple Intelligence. There are some features that just aren't there quite yet. Yeah. But if you look at the base of it, press to bring up the camera and press to shoot. There's complexity behind it, but like I love how non-complex it is to take a picture. And then also, if you go into accessibility settings for it, there's a load of them, and you can say, I don't want to press as hard to do the halfway.
That's the first thing I did. I set it to lighter.
Yeah, and you can do lighter or hard or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's super smart too. Plus, it works with third-party apps, so like Halide supports it. And Obscura is going to support it. And like, I think they did a really great job with this feature. I also love the fact that it's a button that moves, but also has a haptic at the bottom of the movement. So like when you get to the bottom, it's almost like a little spring goes ping when you reach it to just verify. You're like, yeah, you've reached bottom. You bottomed out. It did the thing that you wanted it to do. Like, man, Apple's hardware design. We talk a lot about like Apple software being a little bit of a mess. When Apple does good hardware design and has some software infusing around it, every now and then you go, oh yeah, they killed it with that. Yeah,
that was a great design. You realize, like, of course, this is being released like end of summer, start of fall. You forget that has to be a mechanical button, because in a couple of months people are going to be operating that with gloves. So you can't just have it full capacitance, even though they have both those things in it. iFixit did their teardown, and of course they tore down the button. And again, they discovered a chip with a force sensor in it, as well as the mechanical button. They also, however, found something that we might want to keep an eye on. So it takes the actual location of this button takes the place of one of, like, the iPhone 15's 2 millimeter wave antennas.
Yeah.
So they're saying that now there's only one left by the camera. And so I'm sure they wouldn't have done that if they weren't convinced that people would still have the same experience connecting to mobile. But I guess we're just going to have to see. It might be one of those things. It might even be one of those things where if you hold it horizontally now, the way you hold it, maybe that's going to have a weaker signal than if you hold it the way that people normally hold it. I'm not going to make the joke that everyone's thinking I'm going to make, but it's interesting, something to follow up on.
You're referencing it wrong, Ben. What?
Well, and I think that Apple, we've talked about this before, but Apple has really doubled down in realizing that, the reason we buy the new phone is not because of AI, it's because of the camera. Like we're looking for the camera features. I know that I've put off buying it right now. I've got the case, but it's
funny. You bought the case, but not the phone.
You sent to me, Cosmo, thank you for the case.
That is a true sign of
the case is an aspirational purchase.
Can you ask them to send me the good case when they fix it?
Just visualize the phone.
I bought $60 down the tubes.
Yeah. But I'm holding off a little bit on it just because I was like, I got to really see if the camera's really worth it. I do use the 0.5 a lot. So I've gotten into this thing where I take pictures of my kids and I just make sure that what it needs is a guide, but you put their face right in the center so it doesn't get distorted, and you get these incredible like shots of them somewhere, right? And so I really enjoy that, but I don't know if it's worth upgrading yet, because, and really for what I was waiting for was the spatial camera, the spatial video to go to 4K per eye, which it didn't do. And so when it didn't do that, I was like, well, we'll see if they actually update that API.
Yeah. So this is the where'd it go? I closed it by accident. iFixit spends most of their review on the new battery release function, which lets you, which actually releases the battery when you electrify the glue. Yeah. But here's the camera control button. They ask the question: is the camera control button actually a button? And as you said, Andy, it's an IC, laser welded IC. So it's both physical and it has a force sensor, a strain gauge that turns tiny amount of deformation into changes in resistance. So that's how it senses half presses. The clicks are haptic, right? Or maybe not.
Well, it is. So you move the button and it bottoms out. But
so there is
at the bottom but at the bottom there is a haptic that fires. So you get that
it's a hybrid thing
feel. It's very satisfying when it happens.
It's very cool.
But if you turn it off completely and you press the button, you can feel it. It's still a button. Real button.
iFixit gave it very high repair scores, the highest in a long time, because of this easy remove battery feature.
So they gave it 7 out of 10, whereas the previous model got 4 out of 10. And most of it was about how easy it is to, on the iPhone 16, not the iPhone 16 Pro. The iPhone 16 Pro uses the same pull out adhesive as last year's iPhone 15 Pro, but the iPhone 16 uses this new type of adhesive that de-sticks when you basically put 9 volts across it. And you would think that, oh well, Apple has a special sophisticated tool. No, you basically get a battery, get a 9 volt battery, and basically short the contacts across it.
Wow.
The downside though is that it's not like magic where I've got the new battery in and now I just reverse the process. No, the Apple also released the repair guide for this sort of thing, and they mentioned that when you get the replacement battery, you peel this thing off the back of it. So obviously, they're talking about having its own using Apple certified batteries. It's encased in metal, which is another thing that they're saying will help with heat. They also took a look at a thing that I think we talked about it a little bit a couple of weeks ago about the repair assistant as a way of getting one of the things that iFixit has always been quite correctly kind of on Apple's back about and other people's back about is the idea of having repair parts sort of like tied and coded down to the user. So if you were to swap out a camera module or a battery and it's not an Apple approved part, yeah, you can swap it in, but suddenly it won't work anymore because there's a systems check that says, hey, this isn't an authorized battery. I'm not doing anything. Yeah. So in iOS 18, they have now a repair assistant that pops up if it detects that there's like a new swapped in thing. And they tested it out, and they found that they tested it out last week before they had their iPhone 16 that they bought, and they found it buggy with the iPhone 15. When they tried it on their absolute plain vanilla iPhone 16, and I'm talking about like swapping pretty much everything in and out, they said it worked flawlessly. And for that reason, they actually explicitly said that, okay, we're kind of cool, we're not necessarily cool with it, but most of what we were complaining about has been mitigated because of how well it worked on iPhone 16. So yeah, they're very, very happy about it.
It'll be really interesting to see what happens based on what happened last week in Lebanon. It'll be really interesting to see how the Fixit stuff goes, because I think that a lot of companies are going to start backtracking to wanting to register all the components, because they're going to at least want to have something when you open up the operating system tells you if anything's ever been open, touched, done with this phone. It's going to give you an alert every time as soon as you bring it out of reset, saying, hey, and it'll bring it up it'll bother you that something's changed, because that change, what happened in Lebanon last week changed everything about how people look at electronic components, and so, having proof that all of these components are produced by the manufacturer for that is going to become a bigger deal. I think it won't happen this year or next year, but I think as you look at 3 to 5 years down the road, the chain's going to change because people want to have all those people are going to worry about security.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that would affect Apple necessarily in that way, because there's no way they're getting into the supply chain for there. However, if it is like, hey, if it is a way of we're going to intercept a shipment of iPhones and then do some stuff to it, reseal it, then continue it shipping on the way over there, or just, hey, if we can get a hands on this person's phone for exactly 2 hours, we can introduce something in here. That's
I just think it's going to blunt. It's going to blunt a lot of lawmakers from doing anything about this. Like Apple may continue to go down that path, but they're going to have to argue against this problem. I mean, I think that what happened last week changes the narrative, and it'll be very hard for them to argue that Apple or other companies should have to loosen that even further, because it's going to be. It's just going to be brought up every time they do. I
don't know if they'll be able to trade on that.
This come up a little bit with all the stuff that Right to Repair people have been advocating, and I think that the distinction is, and somebody in our members Discord actually said this, Robbot, an alert is fine, but don't lock me out of my device. I think that what we absolutely should have, and that Apple should continue down the path of, is verifying that the components in your phone or other device are components that it knows about and understands and that are valid. And that if anything changes or anything is out of what Apple considers to be a blessed piece of work, that Apple warn you about it, right? I think that's legitimate, even if you boot a phone and it says, look, this Face ID sensor is not one we know about. Because then, whether it's an explosive or just spy hardware or whatever it might be, we can't even conceive of some of the ideas there. I think being forewarned is forearmed. There is a point at which, though, if it's Apple saying, and also we control all of the hardware and you can't you replace the part without going through this, that leads to a lot of things, including like huge amounts of e-waste and scrap, where you've got computers that are that part of it broke, but the other parts could be used as parts, and yet they can't because of a block. So it's just walking that line where customers are safe, right? And are warned if something weird is going on with their hardware, but not making it impossible for people to get their things replaced or to reuse Apple parts in other Apple systems and have them get verified and validated.
It could be as simple as secure boot on a Windows PC, where everything is signed, and on boot, the device, the operating system says, okay, everything's signed, it's okay. Doesn't prevent you from changing it out, but you're not going to get that secure boot next time.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be as flat out, because the right to repair conversation is becoming a little bit more sophisticated, and acknowledging that, okay, yes, being able to replace a broken screen or a broken camera module, that's really, really nice. And it's nice to have an option to be able to do that outside of the manufacturer. But the modern discussion is saying that, well, but the battery is something different. The battery is an actual consumable. The fact that you have to replace it every 2 or 3 years as opposed to every 10 hours with a flashlight is almost immaterial in the discussion. That's why the EU has specific laws about saying, here is how you have to design your phones. You have to make sure that they actually have 2 levels, that depending on how the EU regards your device, that either it has to be on the broadest level, it has to be able to be replaced by a layman using common tools. On something like an iPhone, I think is what the law actually applies to. It's not as liberal as that, but it basically says that a reasonably skilled person with tools that can be accessible has to be able to get it. There's been some discussion about whether or not this battery change has to do with complying with the EU. iFixit actually talks about this a little bit in their teardown, and who knows, but they don't think it was necessarily done for that reason. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing it's really cool come to that, because when you open in this teardown, there is so much evidence of things that have to do with things that are not necessarily what Apple has always had to do. They have iFixit has a whole examination of the heatsink, the cooling system in this phone, and mentioning that this is something brand new that they've never seen before, and because this thing is going to be, when Apple Intelligence hits, this thing's going to be driven really, really hard, and they're going to need a really, really good, much improved way to get heat off the die if they're going to keep this thing working. So there's a lot of stories being told with this teardown.